It wasn't one single event that broke everything. It was the slow realization that everything I thought I knew was a lie. I'll never forget the feeling, the sinking sensation in the pit of my stomach, the sudden cold sweat on my palms, the heat rising in my chest. It wasn't just a betrayal that I uncovered. It was the fact that I had been blind for so long. I was living in a world I thought I controlled, thinking I had the answers to everything. And then one evening, everything came crashing down. I remember the evening as if it were yesterday. I was at home alone, an unusual occurrence in itself. Usually, Diane and Mia were in and out of the house, but today, it was eerily quiet. I had gotten home early from work, and as I opened the front door, I was hit by that deafening silence. I noticed something different, but couldn't place it at first. The house was tidy, as usual, but the atmosphere felt off. No one was home yet, and yet the air felt heavy, like the weight of a secret was already starting to hang in the room. It was when I walked into the kitchen and saw the small post-it note on the counter that things started to take shape. Be home late. Don't wait for me. D. It was strange. Diane never left notes like that. She would usually call or send a text, but never just a note. There was no explanation, no context. I folded it up, slipping it into my pocket. I didn't know it then, but that note would be the first piece of a much larger puzzle. I tried to focus on work. My head was spinning, but I had things to do. But the thought kept gnawing at me. Diane never just came home late, without any reason. And then Mia, why hadn't she been dropped off by her friend like she usually was? I sat in the living room, waiting for them to return, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I picked up my phone and tried calling Diane. Straight to voicemail. That wasn't like her either. She always picked up. Minutes turned into hours, and still, nothing. By the time I heard the car pull into the driveway, the unease had transformed into something else. My mind was running wild, trying to connect the dots, but I hadn't yet pieced the full picture together. Diane walked in first, her face instantly softening when she saw me sitting there. She had that familiar smile, but I could tell it was forced. "Sorry, I got caught up with a client," she said. Her voice had a note of tiredness in it, but something about her posture felt different. Like she was trying to hide something, like she was out of place in her own skin. Mia followed her in, but she didn't even look at me. That's when I knew something was off. Mia, who was always so eager to see me when I got home, didn't even acknowledge I was there. It was like we were strangers in the same house. That night, Diane barely spoke. She went straight to bed without saying goodnight, something that was completely out of character for her. I stood in the doorway of our bedroom, watching her, the tension in the room thickening with every passing second. I had to know the truth, but I didn't want to confront her just yet. I needed more. I needed proof. Something to tell me I wasn't going crazy. The next few days were a blur of half-answers and awkward silences. Diane's late nights became more frequent, and she began to act even more distant. But the breaking point came when I came home early again, catching her off guard. She was sitting in the living room, her phone in hand, the screen face down. As I walked into the room, she immediately looked up, startled, and quickly shoved the phone in her pocket. "Who was that?" I asked, my voice tight. She paused. It was a split second, but in that moment, I knew I had caught her. "Just a work message," she said, avoiding my gaze. I didn't press her further. I couldn't. But I knew this was it. There was something wrong, and I wasn't just going to sit back and pretend everything was okay. Later that evening, as I sat in my office, trying to distract myself with work, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I opened it, and my world tilted on its axis. It was a message to Diane. "I miss you. Can't wait to see you tomorrow night. Let's make it special." My blood ran cold. The words blurred as I read them again and again. "Can't wait to see you." It wasn't a business text. It wasn't a simple work thing. It was personal. It was intimate. And it was not meant for me. I felt my heartbeat quicken. My hands trembled as I stared at the message, trying to make sense of it. This was it. The undeniable proof that Diane was not only hiding something, she was actively choosing someone else over me. But there was still so much I didn't know. Who was this person? How long had this been going on? How deep did this betrayal go? I decided I had to confront her. No more waiting. But I wasn't going to confront her just yet. No, I wasn't that naive. I needed to think. I needed to understand exactly what was happening before I made a move. I had no idea that the secrets Diane was keeping weren't just the tip of the iceberg. They were just the beginning of something much darker. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at that text message on my phone. My pulse was racing, but I kept my breathing steady, trying to process what I had just discovered. The words on the screen were clear enough. I miss you. Can't wait to see you tomorrow night. Let's make it special. I had no doubt in my mind that the message wasn't from a client. Diane wasn't just working late, she was lying. And she was doing it with someone who wasn't me. The betrayal hit me in waves, but I still didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed to understand how deep this went. I had learned a long time ago that jumping to conclusions too quickly could make things worse. So I waited. And I watched. Over the next few days, the signs became harder to ignore. Diane's behavior grew more erratic, more distant. She stopped talking to me as much, and when she did, it was only surface-level conversation. The woman I had known for over a decade, the woman who had been my partner, my friend, had become someone else entirely. It wasn't just the late nights anymore. It was the little things, the way she would avoid eye contact, the way she would suddenly get a text and walk out of the room to answer it, always making sure I couldn't see the screen. The way she'd lock her phone the second I came near it, the way she'd brush off any of my questions. It was like I was the invisible one, the person who didn't matter anymore. And all the while, I could feel the weight of that damn text message hanging over me like a shadow. But the real turning point came when I finally decided to do something I had never done before. I went through her phone. It was a decision I had been wrestling with for days. I knew it was wrong, that snooping was an invasion of her privacy, but I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know. So, one night, when Diane went to take a shower, I grabbed her phone off the counter. My heart pounded in my chest as I unlocked it. Her password was the same one it had always been. No surprises there. I opened the messaging app, and I immediately went to the conversation I knew I had to see. The messages were worse than I ever could have imagined. There, in plain text, was proof that this wasn't a one-time fling. Diane had been seeing this person, a man named Greg, for months. The messages were flirtatious at first, but then they grew more explicit. They spoke in code, referring to meeting up in secret, arranging getaways when I was out of town for work. There were plans to spend entire weekends together, plans to go on dates that were so intimate, so personal, that it felt like a slap to my face. And I had been so blind. I had trusted her completely. I felt sick, betrayed, furious. But there was one thing I couldn't shake, the feeling of helplessness. Diane hadn't just cheated on me. She had built an entirely separate life, one I knew nothing about. She had lied, not only to me, but to herself. The woman I had trusted with everything was now a stranger to me. And the worst part? She didn't even seem to care. I put the phone down, my mind racing with 100 different thoughts. I couldn't keep living like this, in this facade of a marriage. But I also couldn't just let her get away with it. I had to confront her, but I wasn't sure how. My mind was clouded with anger, hurt, and disbelief. I needed to plan my next move carefully. The next evening, Diane came home late again, just like always. She walked in the door, took off her shoes, and kissed me on the cheek. It was the same routine, like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. I watched her closely, trying to read her. She didn't seem to notice anything was off, but I could tell she was nervous. I could see it in the way she avoided my eyes, in the way she shifted her weight from foot to foot, like she was waiting for me to say something. I didn't. I just watched. Finally, after what felt like hours of silence, I spoke. "So, how's Greg doing?" Her face went white. Her breath caught in her throat. For the first time in weeks, she looked at me. Really looked at me. And I could see the guilt in her eyes. She didn't say anything at first, and I didn't push. I just waited, letting the silence hang between us, thick and suffocating. "Ben, I'm sorry," she whispered. "I never meant for you to find out this way." But I wasn't done. I wasn't going to let her off the hook that easily. "How long, Diane?" I asked. "How long has this been going on?" She hesitated, tears welling up in her eyes. "It started a few months ago," she admitted, her voice breaking. "I was lonely, and he was there for me. I didn't plan for it to go this far, but it just happened. A few months ago, that was the moment everything had changed. That was when the lies began. That was when the woman I thought I knew chose someone else." "Don't you dare tell me it just happened," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "You made a choice, Diane." Over and over again. Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't feel sorry for her. I couldn't. Not after everything. I was done feeling sorry for her. I wasn't going to let this go, and I sure as hell wasn't going to forgive her. I'm sorry, she whispered again, but it was too late. The damage was done, and it was time for her to face the consequences of her actions. I couldn't change what had happened. I couldn't undo the past, but I could control how things moved forward, and I knew exactly what I needed to do. I thought I had prepared myself for the confrontation, but nothing could have fully equipped me for the moment Diane admitted what I already knew deep down. I'm sorry, she kept repeating, as if those two words would magically erase the hurt and deception that had built up over the months. But I knew better now. Words had lost their meaning. They meant nothing when they were nothing but an excuse, a way to make herself feel better while she tore everything I had worked so hard to build apart. You're sorry? I asked, my voice a mixture of disbelief and disgust. I didn't even recognize the person standing in front of me. The woman I once trusted was now just a shadow of that. Sorry doesn't cut it, Diane. Sorry doesn't fix this. Her face contorted in pain as she tried to explain, but I didn't want to hear it. I had heard it all before. The guilt, the excuses, the reasons why she did it, and every time, it all sounded hollow. I had spent years being a good husband, being there when she needed me, supporting her when things got tough. I wasn't perfect, but I had always been loyal. And this was betrayal. The kind that you can't come back from. You don't get it, I said, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and frustration. This isn't about what you did. This is about how long you've been hiding it. How you've been lying to my face. To our daughter. And you think a simple apology is going to make it better? Her eyes welled up with tears, but there was no sympathy in me. None. I was done being the understanding husband. The man who just understood when things went wrong. No. This was different. She was different. And then, as if the universe was mocking me, Mia walked into the room. I hadn't even realized she was home. I had been so consumed by the confrontation that I hadn't heard her footsteps. Mia, our bright, innocent little girl, stood in the doorway, her eyes flicking between Diane and me. She was young, but she wasn't naive. She had heard the tension in the room, seen the coldness between her mother and me. It was impossible to miss. Mama? Mia asked quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. What's going on? I could see the confusion on Mia's face, the same confusion I had felt when I first realized what was happening. It hit me like a ton of bricks. Mia wasn't just witnessing a fight. She was witnessing the unraveling of everything she had known. She was seeing her mother, the woman who had always been her rock, crumble right before her eyes. Diane didn't say anything at first. She just stood there, her face crumpled with guilt. I knew she wanted to protect Mia, but there was no hiding the truth anymore. The damage had already been done, and Mia deserved the truth, even if it meant shattering her innocence. Mia, Diane began, her voice shaking. I need to tell you something. Your father and I. No. I cut her off, my voice firm. No more lies. Mia needs to know what's been going on. She deserves to hear it from both of us. Mia's wide eyes searched my face, her young mind struggling to process what was happening. I knelt down to her level, taking a deep breath, trying to steady myself before I spoke. I had never imagined this moment would come, not like this, not with her standing there, caught in the middle of a mess that wasn't her fault. Mia, I said softly, your mother has been seeing someone else. She's been lying to both of us for a while now. I didn't want you to know like this, but you have to understand. This isn't just a misunderstanding. Your mother chose to be with someone else, and she kept it from both of us. The silence that followed was unbearable. Mia's small body trembled, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. I could see the confusion and hurt in her eyes, and I wished with every part of me that I could shield her from this. But the reality was, I couldn't. This was the truth, and it wasn't something I could protect her from any longer. Diane opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. She stood there, frozen, unable to fix the situation she had created. Mama, Mia whispered, her voice cracking. Why? The question hung in the air, unanswered. Diane's gaze dropped to the floor. She had no explanation that could make this okay, no words that would make this better. Her silence was louder than any explanation she could have given. I stood up, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. The anger was starting to burn again, but I knew I couldn't let it consume me. Not now. Not in front of Mia. Mia, I know this is a lot, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. But I need you to understand that none of this is your fault. Your mother and I, We made choices. We messed up. And now we have to deal with the consequences. I could feel Diane's eyes on me, but I didn't look at her. I couldn't. The damage was too deep. The trust was broken beyond repair. Mia's face was pale as she nodded slowly, her lips trembling as tears welled up in her eyes. I don't understand, Dad, she whispered. Why can't we be a family again? The question broke me. I had no answer. Because the truth was, we couldn't go back to the way things were. The foundation of our family had been shattered, and I didn't know if we could ever rebuild it. Not after everything that had happened. Diane left the room quietly, her shoulders slumped, unable to face the mess she had created. But I stayed with Mia, wrapping my arms around her, holding her as she cried into my chest. She was the only thing that mattered now. I had to protect her, even if I couldn't protect myself. The next few days were a blur. Diane moved into a separate room, and our house became a battlefield of silence and cold exchanges. But there was one thing I knew for sure. I wasn't going to let her walk away without facing the consequences of her actions. I wasn't going to let her tear apart our family and get away with it. She had made a choice, and now it was my turn to make mine. The days that followed were nothing short of a nightmare. What had once been a home full of life and laughter was now a cold, silent shell. Diane and I didn't speak much, save for the occasional terse exchange about logistics. Who would pick up Mia from school? What day the bills needed to be paid? But the emotional distance between us was unbearable. It was as if we were strangers living under the same roof, trying to pretend that nothing had happened. But I couldn't pretend. Not anymore. The hardest part was Mia. She barely spoke to either of us. She spent most of her time in her room, only coming out for meals, and even then, she would eat in silence. I saw the hurt in her eyes every time she looked at Diane. I saw the confusion in her face when she asked me, "Why did you and Mama stop talking?" How do you explain to a child that her world, the world she thought was stable, had been shattered in an instant? How do you tell her that the woman she loved and trusted, the woman who had always been her protector, had made a choice that left the whole family broken? Diane, for her part, seemed lost. She didn't seem to know how to fix things either. She would go through the motions, cooking meals, taking care of Mia when she needed it, but I could see in her eyes that she was empty. It was as if the weight of everything was finally hitting her. Maybe she had thought that her affair was something she could hide, that she could slip back into the life we had built, but the truth had a way of coming to the surface. And now, there was no escaping it. I couldn't just sit there, watching this slow collapse of everything I had ever cared about. I had to act, but I wasn't sure how to do it. How do you confront a person who has destroyed your life? How do you even begin to fix something that seemed so irreparably broken? The turning point came one evening when I was going through the motions of my usual routine, eating dinner alone, watching TV in the living room. Mia was in her room, and Diane was, well, I wasn't sure where she was. I didn't ask. But then, just as I was about to turn in for the night, I heard a faint knock on my door. I opened it, and there she was, Diane, standing in the doorway, looking hesitant but determined. I could see the exhaustion on her face, the way she was holding herself like someone who was running on empty. She wasn't wearing the same look of guilt and shame that she had been wearing for days. This was different. She had made a decision, and it was clear in her posture, in the way she looked at me. There was no more running. There was no more pretending. "Ben," she said softly, her voice breaking the heavy silence between us, "we need to talk." I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. She knew what she had done. We both knew that. "I'm sorry," she said. But this time, it didn't sound like the empty apology she had given before. This one was different, filled with pain and regret. "I know I can't take back what I did, and I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I deserve your forgiveness, but I need to say it. I need to own up to everything." I crossed my arms, leaning against the door frame, trying to keep my emotions in check. I had heard it all before. The same words, the same empty promises. But this time, there was something different about the way she said it. Maybe she had finally come to terms with the consequences of her actions. Or maybe she was just trying to make herself feel better, to convince herself that she hadn't completely destroyed everything. "I've been selfish," Diane continued, her eyes glistening with tears. "I've been selfish and cowardly, and I know that. I wasn't thinking about you, about Mia. I wasn't thinking about anyone but myself and my own needs. I got caught up in something that wasn't real, and I ruined everything. I ruined us." There it was. The truth. The painful, brutal truth. I felt a cold wave of anger and hurt wash over me, but I pushed it down. I wasn't interested in her apologies anymore. I wasn't interested in her explanations. I had made my decision. Diane, I said, my voice steady but hard. This isn't about what you feel or what you regret. This is about what you did and what you continue to do. Do you think this is just going to blow over? Do you think we can go back to the way things were before? Her eyes darted to the floor, and for a moment, I thought she was going to walk away. But she didn't. She stood there, silent, the weight of her actions finally catching up to her. She didn't have an answer, and I didn't expect her to. I don't know what to do, Ben, she whispered, her voice almost a plea. I want to fix this. I want to fix everything, but I don't know how. I shook my head. You can't fix this. Not anymore. You've done too much. You've broken things beyond repair. Diane's face crumpled, and for a moment, she looked like the woman I had once loved, the woman I had once trusted. But that was gone now. That was lost. I don't want to lose you, she said, her voice cracking. I don't want to lose Mia. I don't want to lose my family. Please, Ben, please don't make me lose everything. I could see the desperation in her eyes, but it didn't move me. Not anymore. I had tried. I had tried for so long to make this work, to keep us together. But now, all I felt was exhaustion. I was done fighting for something that wasn't real. I wasn't going to let her tear apart what was left of my dignity, what was left of my family. I stepped back, closing the door between us with one final click. It was over, and there was no turning back. That night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. I had no idea what the future held, no idea what I was supposed to do next. But I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let Diane or anyone else control my life anymore. This was my turn. This was my time to rebuild, to take back control. The weeks that followed felt like I was living in a constant fog. Everything seemed surreal. I went through the motions of my daily life, waking up early for work, taking Mia to school, and pretending everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. Diane and I barely spoke unless we had to, and even then, it was curt. Her presence felt like a ghost lingering in the corner of every room, and I couldn't escape it. Mia had become more withdrawn than ever, speaking less, retreating into her room where she could shut the door on the mess that had become our family. At night, when the house was still, I would lie awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. I replayed everything over and over again. Diane's betrayal, the way she had admitted to everything but seemed to think apologies would fix it. But nothing could fix it now. I was broken, and so was the life we had built. One day, I received an unexpected phone call from Diane's sister, Rachel. We hadn't spoken much in the past few weeks, and when her name flashed across my phone screen, I wasn't sure what to expect. I answered reluctantly, the tension still thick in my chest. Ben, Rachel said, her voice soft, almost cautious, I need to talk to you. I didn't respond right away, unsure of what this conversation would be about. My mind was still preoccupied with everything else, but I knew that if Rachel was calling, it was probably important. I know things have been rough between you and Diane, she continued, but I think you need to hear something. Something you probably don't know. I sat up straight, my curiosity piqued. What do you mean? Diane's been going through more than just what you think, Rachel said, her voice trembling. I don't know if she's told you, but she's been struggling for a long time. She's been seeing a therapist, not for the affair, but for something deeper. My mind raced. Was Rachel telling me that Diane was dealing with something that had caused her to cheat? Something from her past? I didn't know how to process this new information. If Diane had been seeing a therapist, why hadn't she told me? Was this just another lie? What do you mean? I asked, trying to steady my voice, but I could feel the anger rising again. She never mentioned any of this to me. Why didn't she tell me? Rachel hesitated, then sighed. I don't know, Ben, but I think you should know. It wasn't just about you or the marriage. Diane's been carrying some heavy stuff for years. It wasn't an excuse for what she did, but maybe it will help you understand her better. I ran a hand through my hair, trying to process what Rachel had just told me. I had spent so many sleepless nights trying to understand Diane's choices, but nothing made sense. The betrayal, the lies, the deceit, it all felt so selfish. But now, hearing this new information, it made me question everything I thought I knew. Was I being too harsh? Was there a reason for her actions beyond just the affair? I don't know if this changes anything, Rachel, I said, the bitterness creeping into my voice. I don't know if I can forgive her for what she's done. Rachel's voice softened. I'm not asking you to forgive her, Ben. But I think you need to know the whole story before you make any decisions. I just want you to have the full picture. I ended the conversation, my mind spinning. I hadn't expected this. The idea that Diane had been struggling with something deeper, something that I had no idea about, left me feeling both betrayed and sympathetic. But sympathy wasn't going to fix this. Diane had hurt me in a way I couldn't ignore, and no amount of therapy or personal struggle could change the fact that she had made the choice to hurt me. The next day, Diane came to me while I was sitting in the living room, staring out the window. I had been dreading this moment, the moment when she would try to explain herself again, try to get me to forgive her. But this time, there was something different in her eyes. There was no more pleading, no more empty apologies. This time, she came with something else, something real, something raw. Ben, she said, her voice shaking, I've been thinking a lot about what Rachel said, and I know it doesn't change anything. I know that, but I need you to understand, I didn't just hurt you. I've been hurting for a long time, and I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know how to tell you. I felt a lump form in my throat. There she was again, trying to make me feel sorry for her, trying to convince me that her pain was the reason for everything she had done. But it wasn't enough. I wasn't sure what would ever be enough. Diane, I said, my voice calm but firm, I don't care about your reasons. You made your choices. You betrayed me. You destroyed our family, and nothing you say will change that. You don't get to make excuses for it. You don't get to make me feel like I'm supposed to forgive you. She took a step closer, her face pale, eyes brimming with tears. I never meant for any of this to happen, Ben. I didn't want to hurt you. I never wanted to tear apart what we had. But I did, and I'll live with that forever. I looked at her for a long moment, seeing the woman I had loved, the woman who had chosen someone else over me. I didn't feel anger anymore. I didn't feel sadness. I just felt numb, empty. There was nothing left to say. I know you're sorry, I said softly, but I can't keep living in this lie. I need to move on, Diane. I can't keep dragging myself through this. Her face crumpled, and for a moment, I thought she might finally break down and beg me to forgive her. But she didn't. Instead, she turned away, leaving me alone once again in the silence of our home. The silence was deafening, but it was the only thing that made sense. For the first time in weeks, I felt something resembling peace. The storm was finally quieting. The truth had come out, and now, it was time for both of us to deal with the aftermath. The silence that followed Diane's admission hung heavily in the air, thicker than anything I had felt before. I'd spent weeks trying to come to terms with everything that had happened, trying to make sense of the shattered pieces of my life. But now, as she stood in front of me, tearfully apologizing again, the weight of the moment settled in. No amount of apologies, no amount of explanations, could ever undo what she had done. It didn't matter if she was hurting too. It didn't matter if there were reasons behind her actions. What mattered now was the fallout, the broken trust, the broken family. I was done. Done with trying to fix what couldn't be fixed. Done with being the one who held everything together while she took what she wanted. I had spent too much time trying to be understanding, trying to forgive, but nothing seemed to heal the wound. Every time I looked at her, every time she spoke, all I could see was the image of her with him, the man she had chosen over me. I can't keep doing this, Diane, I said quietly, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. I've given everything, and you've torn it apart. It's too much. She looked at me, her face crumpling as though she wanted to say something more, but she stopped. What was left to say? What could she possibly say that hadn't already been said in the last few weeks? Every apology felt like a band-aid on a wound that was far too deep to heal. I wasn't angry anymore. No, anger had long been replaced by something far more dangerous, resignation. I had resigned myself to the fact that my life, the life I thought I understood, was gone. Diane stood there for a long moment, her eyes searching mine, as if waiting for a sign of forgiveness, but I had nothing left to give. I had been depleted. I had tried to be patient, to be the man who understood. But the truth was, I had nothing but the scars left. Ben, she whispered, her voice almost inaudible, I know I've ruined everything. And I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve that. I could see the truth in her eyes, but it didn't matter. I wasn't here to soothe her guilt. I wasn't here to make her feel better about her choices. I'm done. I said flatly. I can't keep pretending that things are fine. We both need to move on. For our sake, and for Mia's. At the mention of Mia's name, I saw Diane's expression shift, a flicker of guilt flashing in her eyes. She had hurt me, yes, but she had hurt Mia even more. Mia, who had been the innocent bystander in all of this. Mia, who had looked up to her mother with unquestioning love and trust. It was hard for me to even look at Diane without seeing the damage she had done to our daughter. I need to talk to her, Diane said suddenly, her voice steady for the first time in days. I know she's been shutting me out, but I have to try. I have to explain. I owe her that much. I nodded, but my heart was heavy. Mia was already so lost, so confused. I had tried to be there for her, tried to make her feel safe, but I knew the damage had already been done. Diane could apologize, could try to explain all she wanted, but Mia's trust was already shattered. It would take time, years, perhaps, for her to understand what had happened, if she ever would. Diane left the room, and I sat there in the stillness, trying to steady my breathing. I couldn't change what had happened. I couldn't undo the damage, but I could control what happened next. I could choose how I moved forward. I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life wallowing in pain and regret. I had a daughter to protect, a life to rebuild, and that's exactly what I was going to do. The next few days were a blur. Diane made an attempt to talk to Mia, but it was clear that it didn't go well. Mia had locked herself in her room, refusing to come out. Diane spent hours outside her door, pleading with her, trying to get through to her, but Mia refused to open up. It was heartbreaking to watch, but in a way, I was grateful. Mia was processing things in her own way. She was dealing with the pain of her own broken heart, and I wasn't going to force her to do anything she wasn't ready for. As for me, I threw myself into work. I buried myself in the office, distracting myself from everything that had happened. The routine was comforting in a way, something to hold on to when everything else felt like it was falling apart. But no matter how much I worked, I couldn't escape the weight of what was happening at home. One evening, as I sat in my office late, trying to clear my head, I received a call. It was from Rachel again. "Ben," she said, her voice tense, "I need you to know something." I could tell by the tone of her voice that this wasn't going to be a casual conversation. "What is it, Rachel?" I asked, feeling a pit form in my stomach. "Diane's leaving," she said. "She's packing up. She's made her decision. She's going to stay with Greg." I sat back in my chair, the words hitting me harder than I had anticipated. It shouldn't have shocked me. I knew it was coming, but hearing it out loud made it feel real. Diane was leaving. She was walking away from everything we had, our family, our life. She had made her choice, and now it was final. She told me this morning. Rachel continued, her voice thick with emotion. "She says she can't stay with you. She says it's over." I didn't know what to feel. Part of me wanted to feel relief, like a weight had been lifted. Part of me wanted to feel angry, betrayed once again, but I had nothing left to give. It didn't matter anymore. Diane had already left me emotionally, long before she physically walked away. "Do you think she'll come back?" I asked, my voice flat. I wasn't sure if I was asking Rachel or myself. Rachel paused before answering. "I don't know, Ben, but she's made her choice, and I think you need to start thinking about your own." I let her words hang in the air. She was right. It was time to think about my own future. It was time to take control. Diane had chosen Greg, and that was something I couldn't change. But I could choose what I did next. I could choose to move forward. I had to. For Mia. For myself. The decision had been made for me. It was time to let go. It was strange how everything seemed to shift so quickly. Just weeks ago, I had been living in a comfortable, predictable world. A world where everything had its place, and even when things got tough, I knew I had a partner by my side. Now, I was standing on the edge of something completely foreign to me, something I wasn't prepared for, but that was becoming my new reality. Diane had made her decision. She was leaving. She was walking away from me, from Mia, from the life we had built together. I had to accept that. The house felt emptier without her, even when she was still in it. Her absence wasn't physical yet, but it was already palpable. There were no longer any dinners shared at the table, no more conversations about the mundane things of the day. I had gotten so used to the routine, to the rhythm of our lives together, that it was jarring to feel that rhythm break. And Mia was silent. She barely spoke to me. She barely spoke to Diane. She retreated more and more into herself. I could see the hurt in her eyes, and I felt powerless to fix it. I tried to be there for her, to give her the space she needed while also showing her that I was still her father, that I wasn't going anywhere. But it wasn't easy. Every time I looked at her, I saw the pieces of our family, broken and scattered, and it broke me inside. I wanted to be strong for her, to keep things as normal as I could, but it felt impossible. Diane's departure was inevitable, and Mia had seen it coming just as much as I had. The question that lingered in the air was how we would survive this. One evening, after dinner, I found myself sitting on the couch with Mia, watching an old movie we used to watch together when she was younger. She hadn't smiled in days, but tonight, for the first time, I saw a glimmer of something in her eyes, a faint recognition of the life we once had. As the credits rolled, Mia turned to me, her voice small but clear. "Dad," she said, her words heavy. "Is it really over? Is Mom really leaving?" It was the first time she had spoken about Diane's decision since everything had unfolded, and the weight of her question hit me like a ton of bricks. How do you explain something like that to a child? How do you tell your daughter that the love of her life, the woman she trusted with everything, had walked away? "I don't know, sweetheart," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. "Your mom has made her choice, and we have to respect that. But we're going to be okay. You and me." She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she curled up beside me, her head resting on my shoulder. For the first time in weeks, I felt a small sense of peace. It wasn't much, but it was something. I knew that we would get through this together, even if the road ahead was going to be long and difficult. The following morning, Diane's bags were packed. She had made it official. I hadn't expected her to leave so soon, but there she was, standing in the hallway, ready to walk out the door. She didn't say much as she collected her things, just the occasional glance in my direction, a silent acknowledgement that we were both trapped in this painful reality. The anger I had once felt had faded into a quiet resignation. I didn't want her to leave, but I knew I couldn't stop her. She had already left emotionally, and there was nothing I could do to change that. "Mia's in her room," I said, breaking the silence. "She doesn't want to talk right now." Diane nodded, her eyes distant. "I know. I've tried, but I think she hates me." "She doesn't hate you," I said, though I wasn't sure if that was true. I didn't know what Mia was feeling, but I knew she was angry. Angry at Diane for tearing apart the family. And who could blame her? "But you should talk to her. She needs you, even if she's acting like she doesn't." Diane didn't respond. She just looked at the floor, her hands trembling as she adjusted the strap of her bag. And then, without another word, she turned and walked out the door. I watched her leave, the weight of it sinking in as the door clicked shut behind her. It was final now. She was gone. I stood in the hallway for a long time after that, listening to the quiet of the house. The silence was deafening. For years, the noise of our lives together, of laughter, of arguments, of love, had filled this space. But now it was just me. Just Mia and me, left to pick up the pieces. I walked into Mia's room and sat on the edge of her bed. She was curled up, staring out the window, lost in thought. She didn't even acknowledge me when I sat down. I wasn't sure what to say. I didn't know how to fix this. I wasn't even sure if I could. "Mia," I said gently, "I know this is hard. I know you're angry, and I understand. I'm angry too, but we're going to get through this. Together. You're not alone." She finally turned her head to look at me, her eyes red from crying. "I don't understand, Dad," she whispered. "Why did she leave us? Why did she leave me?" I didn't have an answer for her. How could I? Diane had made her choice, and there was no changing that. I had spent days, weeks, trying to understand why she had done what she did, and I still didn't have any answers. But I knew one thing for sure. Mia needed me now more than ever. "She left because she couldn't figure things out, Mia," I said softly, my heart breaking for her. "But that's not your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. We're still a family, even if things have changed." She didn't respond right away, but I could see the faintest glimmer of understanding in her eyes. She wasn't okay, but she was starting to process it, and that was all I could hope for. The days that followed were tough, but there was a shift. Mia and I began to form a new routine. We spent more time together, just the two of us. We went to the park, we watched movies, and we talked. It wasn't easy. We both carried the weight of everything that had happened, but slowly, bit by bit, we started to heal. I had no idea what the future would hold. I didn't know if Diane would ever come back, if Mia would ever truly forgive her. But I did know this: We would be okay. We would survive. And maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of a new chapter for us both. Weeks passed, and slowly but surely, the tension in the house began to fade. Diane was gone, and while the hurt and confusion still lingered, something shifted between Mia and me. The heaviness of the past few months started to lift, replaced by the quiet realization that we were still standing together. And that, in itself, was something to be grateful for. It wasn't easy. There were days when Mia still retreated into herself, when the silence in her room echoed louder than any words could. But there were other days when we laughed, when we shared simple moments that brought a sense of normalcy back into our lives. I took her to her favorite cafe on weekends, just the two of us, talking about everything and nothing. It felt good to be there for her, to show her that despite the chaos, we still had each other. And slowly, I could see the walls she had built around herself starting to crack. One evening, as we sat together watching an old family movie, one that had always been a favorite of ours, Mia turned to me with a small, uncertain smile. "Dad," she said, her voice quiet but filled with something I hadn't heard in weeks. "I think I'm starting to understand. I think we can be okay, even if things are different now." Her words hit me harder than I expected. They weren't a complete resolution. Not everything was perfect, but they were a step forward. A sign that, despite everything, we were finding our way out of the darkness. Mia wasn't okay yet. I wasn't either. But we were working on it, together. It was in those small moments, those quiet times when Mia and I were alone, that I realized something. I didn't need Diane to fix things. I didn't need her to come back to make our family whole again. We could be whole without her. It would take time, it would take effort, but the bond between a father and daughter was something no one could break. Not even Diane. One afternoon, after school, Mia and I were walking home when she looked up at me and said, "Dad, I think I'm ready to see Mom again." I wasn't sure how to respond at first. It had been weeks since Diane had left, and I wasn't sure if Mia was truly ready for that kind of reconciliation. But I could see it in her eyes. She was finally taking the first step toward healing. And I knew that whatever happened, whatever Diane decided to do, Mia and I would be okay. We decided to reach out to Diane. The phone call was awkward at first, the tension thick in the air, but eventually, Diane agreed to meet with Mia. I wasn't sure what would happen next. Would there be tears? Would there be forgiveness? Or would there be more hurt? I didn't know, but I knew that Mia was strong. She was resilient, just like me. A few days later, Diane showed up at our doorstep. She had changed. I could see it in the way she held herself, in the way she looked at us. Not with guilt, but with a quiet hope. She wasn't asking for forgiveness, but there was an unspoken acknowledgement that she had done something irreparable. "Mia," she said softly, her voice trembling slightly, "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I deserve it. But I'm here, and I want to try to be a part of your life again, if you'll let me." Mia stood still for a moment, her eyes searching her mother's face. I could see the hesitation there, the fear of opening her heart again. But then, after what felt like an eternity, she stepped forward. Slowly, tentatively, she hugged Diane. It wasn't a perfect moment. It wasn't the happy reunion I had once imagined. But it was a start. A small but powerful start. For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace. Not because everything was fixed, but because we had taken the first steps toward healing. Diane had made mistakes, terrible, heartbreaking mistakes, but the future wasn't set in stone. People could change. People could try again. And while I didn't know what that meant for our family, I knew that Mia and I had a new beginning ahead of us. And as for me, I was ready to move forward. I had learned that sometimes you have to let go of the past in order to create something new. I didn't need Diane to make me whole again. I already was. I had found strength I never knew I had. And Mia and I would build a life that was ours, a life that was full of hope and second chances. It wasn't going to be easy, but we had each other. And that was enough. The storm had passed. The calm had settled in. And for the first time in a long time, I could finally breathe. To be continued, or not. Because, sometimes, life is what we make of it. And the future, no matter how uncertain, was full of endless possibilities.